All right, viewers, welcome to the TCP Talks Virtual Summit. And I have an amazing guest today, and that is actually Dr. Sukhi Muker. And now, Sukhi, you've actually been on the Chiropractic Philanthropist podcast as well. And I got to tell you, you were actually one of the highest downloaded episodes, your episode. And it actually was one of the, yeah, it
I
down.
did that. Cool. Awesome.
And not just that, but it was downloaded in one of the shortest amount of times as well. Like, I mean, they grew so fast, the number of downloads. So I had to have you on the virtual summit. I'm so glad
Awesome.
that you accepted
Thank
our
you.
invitation.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
Well, in our introduction, I shared with our viewers and listeners
Yeah.
a little bit about you, but can you share, a little bit more? Tell us about you, the chiropractor, but also tell us your story. Tell us, about you, the leader in the profession today as well.
Absolutely. So, for me, I was raised on the other side of the tracks. So, 21 years ago, my life was very, very different. And, I had health issues. I suffered with anxiety, depression. I had pretty extreme addictions. And I'd left home at a really young age. And I really hit rock bottom in my life. And I sort of had this pivotal turning point that during a suicidal moment where I realized that, man, I actually don't want to leave this world and actually wanted to stay in it. And essentially what I did was I got my stuff back together, but the most profound thing was that the doctors, Ed, they wanted to get me on pharmaceutical medication drugs to get me better. And here I was, 19 years old, high school dropout, from a intellectual standpoint, not a very smart kid, but a logical kid. And I thought to myself, I said, in a big part, it's drugs and addictions that got me here. I don't understand how more drugs are going to get me out of here. And I chose not to go that path. So as a result, I actually began to educate myself. I spent time in libraries. I read lots of books, eventually got my stuff together. I spent just over 10 years in post-secondary school, got a bunch of letters behind my name, eventually became a chiropractor. My journey in chiropractic was unique because I went to Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, which is a very mechanistic chiropractic college. I have a different take on chiropractic colleges because I'm very grateful for the education I got at CMCC because I can diagnose and understand illness and disease. I can run any orthopedic test extremely well. I studied hard there. I graduated on the dean's list with clinical honors. But what I also saw early in my education was that I saw that it was incomplete. So I supplemented my chiropractic education the same way I supplemented the rest of my education with really trying to understand chiropractic, understand the big idea within chiropractic, and it resonated with me so strong. It was so logical. It made so much sense. It's almost like I felt like I've been waiting my whole life for this message and this idea, and here it was packaged in this beautiful thing called chiropractic. So I graduated from CMCC in 2003. Moved back home, which is Vancouver, British Columbia, opened up my practice in a place I always dreamed of living. It's a seaside community just minutes from the downtown core called West Vancouver. Did my thing, opened up my practice, and very quickly I learned a lot of the tools and strategies that I'd learned, whether it was scripting or things that success coaches put out there, just didn't resonate with me in terms of what to do and how to connect with people and how to build, a healthy, heavy practice. I had a business partner at the time. After a couple years, I ended up buying her out, doing my own thing, and that was probably the greatest gift because, here I was in 2005, 2006, six figures in debt. Okay, we're
Wow.
talking student loans, business loan, bought out my business partner. Yeah, 100,000+ in debt. I can't remember the exact number. And it really forced me to think about what's most important to me. And I actually felt to serve chiropractic, I needed to build this massive practice with huge volume And so I did what I did best. I wasn't in a relationship. I was single at the time. And, I hit it 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day in my practice. And, I built this beautiful machine and it was very efficient. I learned from the school of hard knocks, meaning I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And with making a lot of mistakes, I corrected those mistakes. But here I was a few years later, and I realized quickly that I have this huge practice, but this actually isn't what I signed up for. And so as a result of that, I started scaling back. I went from 6 days a week to 5 days a week, from 5 days to 4.5 days, from 4.5 to 4 days, from 4 to 3.5. I presently am in practice 3 days a week, about 20 hours a week. That created space in my life so I could begin writing. I have a published book. It's done extremely well. It's got out there, and I say extremely well in that it's really transformed people's lives. When people read it, it has an impact. It's very heartfelt. I share my story. And I'm a personal growth and development junkie. I'm 41 years old. Last 22 years, I just live for anything that makes human beings be their best. So if I can be my best, I believe that I can inspire others and show others to be their best too. And that's really what it's about, is about developing that huge abundance mindset, abundance state, so we can affect both our personal and our professional lives to live a life that's congruent with our value system. So, here I was. I slowed down in practice from a chiropractic standpoint. It looks like, oh wow, you had this like crazy huge practice, and now you're only in practice a few days a week, and you see a lot less people. Yet, from a business standpoint, it was a constant trajectory in this direction. And later on, I'm happy to share where I am and what I'm doing in my life from a financial standpoint, and what I've been able to accomplish in getting in a very short time from being in debt to really living my dream life. And I say my dream life. Like when people ask me, how's life? Some people say living the dream. I'm like, well, what's the dream? I'm like, I'm living my dream. What's like cool and fun for me? I'm living my dream. So today I spend my time as an endurance athlete. I love pushing my mind, body, spirit, and really pushing the envelope of human potential. I've raced dozens of marathons, dozens of ultra marathons, anything from a 30-mile, 50-mile, 100-kilometer race, all the way to 100-mile ultra marathons, like running for 100 miles straight, running for 20 hours straight, longest breaks, 2 minutes. I've competed in 7 Ironmans. Last year, my finishing time in Ironman put me in the top 1% of finishers worldwide for Ironman. So I competed at a really high level in swim, bike, and run. And, for me, it's not about impressing people, but impressing upon them. Here I was several years ago, never had swim lessons in my entire life. Hadn't ridden a bike in 18 years, and I just started running in 2005. And here we are in 2015. So really, people say, oh, you're a runner. Well, yeah, I've been running for 9 years. I'm actually a hockey player. I started playing hockey when I was 4 years old, and, played through college and everything. And, when I was done chiropractic college, I played at chiropractic college as well. It just wasn't doing it for me, and I figured I got to do something else. I quit playing men's hockey. A week later said, I'm going to run a marathon. And so, there I was. So today I'd say, who's Sukhi today? Sukhi's a guy who lives his life in his own ideals. I serve people in my practice. I do speak on stages. My book has gotten out there. And I'm super inspired about teaching chiropractors to create a life, not just a practice. A practice is a part of your life. To create a life of fulfillment, which includes your practice, and truly understanding the vitalistic principles within chiropractic. Because I believe that once people get a whiff of what the true vitalistic concepts within chiropractic are, they're so logical from a scientific, biological standpoint, it's difficult not to love them and want to embrace them and want to live your life by them, which is your life, not just your practice. So I live my life based on principles and a vitalistic paradigm.
And
Yeah.
and I'm going to just circle back to here about your education, because you made a really good point about, I'm not making any judgments. I think CMCC is a great school. I mean, you'll definitely pass your boards when you're done.
Yeah.
But I mean, if docs are listening and they're going, how did you supplement? Like you use that word, supplement your chiropractic education. Is there any
Yeah,
resources you want to drop for docs on that?
absolutely. I spent, when I was in school ed, I spent, I'm going to take a stab at this. I believe at the time it was about 17 or $18,000 a year in tuition. Okay, I think that's my guess. I think it started at 50 and it ended off in 20. So you can do the math on. Let's say 4 years chiropractic school, 80K. Okay, I spent close to 30,000K on seminars during my time at chiropractic college.
I believe
Because,
you.
like, from a logical perspective, this is what I said. I'm going to chiropractic college. Chiropractic college is going to get me my doctor of chiropractic degree. It is going to give me a license to practice. It'll give me that title. It'll help me pass my boards. But when it comes to practicing the full scope of a vitalistic model of chiropractic, it definitely is incomplete. So I need to complete my education. I'm already spending 80K. What's another 30? So, I mean, you name it, I went to seminars, I heard speakers, and I'm going to drop a name here to somebody who's been a great mentor and a great friend of mine. It's been Dr. Arnaud Bernier. And Arnaud taught me the vitalistic principles of chiropractic. And I took those principles, and being the gearhead that I am, I took those principles and packaged them in a way that people could understand today through value-based communication. It's so important that we communicate to people's value systems. We can't shout from the bleachers. We need to meet people where they are and bridge them a couple steps forward. So I went to seminars. Some of them were weekend seminars. Some of them were 7 to 10 day intensive programs. I've done so many. If people really want to know, send me an email. To put in perspective, in 22 years, every year I've done anywhere from 2 to 4 intensive programs. So I don't know, you do the math on that, that's like, it's a lot of programs, over the years. Half of them within chiropractic, the other half, nothing to do with chiropractic. Several years ago, I found myself front row at a Tony Robbins program. Everyone knows who Tony Robbins is,
Yeah.
but anything that's going to allow me to grow as a human being is going to help me as a person, which includes me in chiropractic. That I've read tons in books. I detail everything I write in books to date. I haven't read this many, but I've read and referenced well over 5,000 books and research articles. When I was in school, I went out of my way to read at least one research article every single day. So, you do that. Every year I was reading over 300 research articles, and I was in school for almost 10 years. So, it's just like I just wanted to learn all this information and all this knowledge. And today that's transformed. I read podcasts, I listen to podcasts. I read people's blogs. I still read books. I do all this stuff. And now with time, it's gotten far more efficient where, I can have a workout and, I can be on my bike for 2 hours and I can burn through 2 podcasts of high
Yeah.
value. So, we can collapse time and be far more efficient. So not only did I do that in school ed, I still do it today.
And so I mean I love what we were talking about here too, because I think, and I mean I can't take credit for it, but I mean the best investment you'll ever make is in yourself.
Yeah,
I mean,
abs-
you've probably grown every time that you do one of those seminars or those intensives.
absolutely. And, I think a big piece of that is that I've been willing to look at my stuff. I've been willing to see the blocks that were holding me back, because if I go back and visit the 19-year-old me and say, hey, Sukhi, when you're 41 years old, you're going to be doing X, Y, and Z, and this is a life you're going to be living, I'd be like, you're absolutely insane. There's absolutely no way that's going to happen. I mean, if you would have told me when I was 19 I was going to spend more than 10 years in post-secondary school, here's a high school dropout. There's absolutely no way that was going to happen. Never mind live the life that I had. So it's like I had to fill the shoes of what the 41-year-old Sukhi is. And today I'm filling the shoes of what the 50-year-old, 60-year-old, and 70-year-old Sukhi is. So it's being on that journey of self-exploration and self-discovery and seeing my stuff. We all have stuff. Are we coming from our highest self, or are we jumping in our ego? Are we trying to shut down? where am I holding back? Where am I not fully expressing myself? And there's things that I do every single day that allows me to be continually on that path of self-exploration, discovery. It's not like I go to a weekend seminar and then I bump back into, my regular life Monday. My wife and I, Kate, we have a rule. Every time we go to some seminar, a workshop, whatever, I say, after we go to that workshop and seminar, when we go back to our regular life, we get back on a plane, we come back home, we have to make at least one change in our life. If we don't make one change in our life, we've wasted our time, our energy, and money coming to the seminar. And so we actually talk about what it's going to be. So if you multiply that, over the days, over the weeks, and every single week we reevaluate, it really helps that I have a wife that's on the exact same journey and path, because these are the conversations we have. And we call each other on our stuff, and we keep each other growing, which is enormous to me. That's what love is. It's, to me, the purpose of marriage is this: is that when you're up, your partner throws darts at you because you're in your ego state. For me, she brings me down. But when I'm down, and I'm just not feeling it, she brings me back up. That, to me, that's what love is that she keeps me balanced, she keeps me equilibrated, she keeps me in my power.
That's awesome too. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. I'm so, blessed with a wife and who's so supportive, and she's like my rock, man. She totally is. Suki, what I wanted to do too is to kind of just circle back again and just really solidify for doctors that are viewing today, if we had to, distill the whole process down and say, what is it that your expertise is? After all of this education, all of this learning, this exploration, what would you say that it is?
My expertise is helping people to truly live an abundant life.
Awesome. And that's our theme today, isn't it?
That is. That's what we're talking about, how to live an abundant life. And so does that include practice? Does that include chiropractic? Absolutely. But as I learned, it's way more than that. You could have a booming practice and actually not be fulfilled. That was my experience. So how do we create abundance in every aspect of our life?
And you're going to drop 3 strategies, like 3 key, tips and secrets for docs today.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So number 1 is something that I call imprints. Okay. So imprints are the ideas, the concepts that we actually shape our perception with. So think of it like this, Ed. When I think of people's imprints, when I was a younger version of me, 19 years old, I had imprints that, based on my experiences, that this world was a rough and tough place, that this world was a hostile place, and I had to be a certain way in order to respond to that. So most of our imprints come from concepts like our parents told us, at least my parents, money doesn't grow on trees.
Yes.
Things like that. So these are imprints, and subconsciously we take these imprints with us, and they hold on to us and create these shackles at a subconscious level, and they prevent us from moving forward. So imprints are how we actually biologically shape our brain and our neural waves. And again, this is looking at going beyond Newtonian science, is really understand the physics of things, in that when we start to change our imprints, we start to change the way we look at things. We start to change and see what's possible for us. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to share a story. I mentioned earlier I live in West Vancouver. West Vancouver is on the west coast of Canada. And when I came here, it was my dream to live in this community. The only challenge, Ed, with living in this community was I was broke, in debt, and when I did the analysis, it was the most expensive and the most affluent community to live in our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm like, how the heck am I going to make this happen? So I'm going to give an example of how I changed my imprints. In 2005, 2006, I started going for jogs. Every single house around me, multi-million-dollar homes, right on the water. It's a beautiful community. The ocean's on one side, we have mountains on the other. A side story here, I used to leave my practice, and in 15 minutes from leaving my practice, I would be on my snowboard at the top of the mountain boarding down. And I did that 5 nights a week with my season's pass. It was just like amazing. Summertime, running on the seawall, water sports. It's just an amazing place to live. So I'd go for a jog and I would just look at all these homes and I had these imprints. I did the math in my head. I was like, okay, one adjustment, $40 an adjustment. I need to see 10,000 people a week for this many years to afford this home. The math didn't make sense. It just like, there was absolutely no way it was going to happen for me. So I said, you know what? I just got to trust. I got to trust that something's going to happen. The universe is going to support this process. And rather than seeing those homes as being separate from me, I started running by them thinking, yeah, I could live in that home. I could afford that home. I could like see myself walking through these homes and things like that. And so at first I was totally faking it. Like I was saying to myself, I was like, yeah, right, dude. Like, how's that going to happen? You're like some dude from nowhere. You're never going to be able to live here. Sure, you can set up a practice here, but you're going to have to live in the more affordable part of town, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially what I was doing is every single day I'd go for a jog, and the jog was like, 30, 40 minutes. I was imprinting within myself this whole abundance that was this community. I was like shifting the way I was looking at it. So all of a sudden, what started to happen several months, a year down the road, Ed, was I started believing it. And when I started believing it, I started thinking a little bit differently. I started speaking a little bit differently. When someone would walk into my practice and, I know that, they're millionaires and they have lots of money, this, that, all of a sudden I wasn't intimidated by them anymore. I just saw them as real human beings, as people, as opposed to these amazing business people. It's all of a sudden like I increased my vibration of who I was. I increased my resonance. I started seeing myself as being worthy of what all these other people had accomplished over here. So imprints are who we're being. So if I want to live like in a home here that costs millions of dollars and live in this beautiful community and have a great lifestyle, how do I need to walk? How do I need to talk? How am I going to dress? How am I going to respond to people? How am I going to connect with people? How am I going to serve people? Essentially, when we change our imprints, Ed, I talked about how I had to grow into the shoes of who I am today. We start changing the way that we act. We start changing the way that we behave. And all of a sudden, it's like I created this little game in my mind. It's like, I'm like, all of a sudden, I feel like, I don't know if this is true or not. I'm like, the universe is taking notice of this guy, Sukhi. He's not like vibing in the same place. He's like changing stuff. It's like, we got to start sending him some goodness. And it was like a video game for me as I do this. But, these imprints work. It's like if you walk into your office, okay, and let's just say you're not seeing, I hate talking numbers, but let's just say you're not seeing a lot of people and you want to see a lot of people. If you walk into your office every single day and you're only seeing a handful of people and your place is a morgue, and every single day you're driving to the office and you're visualizing and you're imagining the place being a morgue, you're just going to get more of a morgue. If you wake up every single morning and you start to change what you're thinking about, so what you're visualizing, what you're attending, if you start to actually see your practice with your mind's eye as being this, there's a lineup out the door, the waiting room is full, my adjusting rooms are totally full, I am like slammed all day. You start seeing it, you start feeling it, you're starting to change your imprints. So changing our imprints for every aspect of our life, it works. It's powerful stuff. And I'm going to share a couple stories here. So I was single. I got out of a serious relationship. I was single for a couple years, and I knew I had to groom myself because it's like I kept attracting the same woman into my life. She just had a different face and name, and it wasn't working, right? So I'm like, you got to do some work. You got to bring yourself to a new place so you're able to, create that field, attract that right person in your life. It's actually kind of funny. I had to create imprints of getting so comfortable with myself. Every Friday night, I'd go out for dinner by myself. Every Saturday night, by myself. And it was kind of funny because servers thought I was we were a table for one. They go, yeah, you want to sit at the bar? I'm like, no, I want a table. I'm dining me tonight. Every Saturday night, I went to Starbucks with a book, and I would read a book by myself. Really got comfortable with myself. I got lots of friends. I'd go out every now and again, but just really got comfortable with myself. Visualized I wrote down my ideal partner, and I actually said to a friend a couple years later, I'm ready to meet my wife. Um, Jumped online. I online dated for less than 48 hours. Met my wife. We've been together for 8 years. We have a 2-year-old daughter. We've been married coming up on our 6-year wedding anniversary. The most amazing partner I could ever have. But it's like I created imprints
Yeah.
for that to happen. Okay. I'll share the story about the house. And again, I don't share this to impress people or impress you, but to impress upon you. I'm a high school dropout from nowhere. It was not too long ago, just a short several years ago, I was 6 figures in debt. Okay. Right now, we are building our dream home that's going to be valued at approximately $8 million right by the water. Okay. Imprints. I had to grow into the shoes of that. Like I invite you guys, it's going to be ready end of 2016, 2017. Come visit us. It's going to have a pool. It's going to be good times. People, it's like, but like imprints, I grew into that. And what's possible for me is possible to every single person listening to this podcast. So let's segue into something else in how we create imprints, because they're all related to each other. We talked about 3 things. To create imprints, we must have rituals. Okay. Daily rituals, because either life happens to us, Ed, or we happen to life. Okay. So every single day, this is how I start my day. I start my day with exercise. So what I do is I get my atoms, my molecules, my cells moving. It makes them happy. It's very important to move your body every single day. I'm an endurance athlete, so I choose to do swim, bike, run. Okay, you can do whatever you want. You can do jumping jacks if you want, CrossFit, whatever turns your crank. After I exercise, I meditate, I create silence in my head. And after I create silence in my head, Ed, I see myself in my life in pure perfection for the day. If I'm at my office, I see healing transformations taking place. I see a lineup out my door for that day. I see new people calling in the office. I see people who haven't been in for a little while doing callbacks. I see myself having fun. I see myself being in flow. I see families. I see babies coming in. I see people having true transformations on the tables. I visualize, I see it. After that, I've exercised, I've meditated to create silence, I've visualized my ideal day. After that, I journal. I write it down. I make a physical proclamation to the world. That may sound like a lot to those listening, but the reality is sometimes I'll meditate, visualize, and journal in 6 minutes, if that's all I have. Okay. Other times it might be 2 hours. It just depends on my schedule. Having a 2-year-old, things get creative with us. And trying to be parents that are present and with her, we have to be creative to do that. We can talk more about that after. But how we create imprints is by having daily rituals so you can script your life. If you script your life, life doesn't happen to you, and you create a certain state in which you move through life. So all of a sudden, when you are starting out in practice and your practice is a morgue, hey, I know what that's like. I started my practice from scratch. First day I opened my office, I had 0 people on the schedule. And I walked in there and they're like, so how am I going to get some people in here? Let's start thinking of my prehistoric marketing ways. But the point is, I know what that feels like. But if I went to work every single day thinking it's going to be a morgue, I'm just going to go deeper and deeper, deeper into this place of anxiety or depression and things like that. So when we create imprints, we open up the opportunity to see life in a way that isn't our present reality. So imprinting requires dreaming. I'm a huge dreamer, and I think really big. I mean, if I didn't think big, I wouldn't have ran 100-mile races and things like that. I wouldn't have become an Ironman triathlete and be like, not only am I going to complete the race, I'm going to become one of the best age groupers in the world. And, and I focused towards that and doing that. Again, here I was 5 years ago, hadn't swam a day in my life. So what did I do? I hired myself a swim coach. I was in the pool 6 days a week. I learned to swim, and I'm progressively improved. Now I compete with people who've been swimming since they were 3 years old, and they're like fish in the water. And, I could bring myself to that level. So when we have these daily rituals, we add to our imprints, we consciously create our day, and know that when you're consciously creating your day, you only want to think one step, two step ahead of where you presently are. I'll give you an example. If you went on a road trip, you're in Edmonton, right,
Yeah.
Ed?
Yep.
So let's say you went on a road trip and you guys wanted to go to, say, California, okay? California road trip, and you got your GPS and stuff. Are you thinking about the left and right turns that you're gonna make to get to, say, Disneyland in California 5 minutes after you've left your home in Edmonton?
I'm thinking about the destination.
You're thinking about the destination, right? Okay. You're thinking of destination. We're going to California. But the reality is you're also thinking about where you are at the stoplight in Edmonton and how to get to the main highway. You're
Oh
focused,
yeah. Yeah,
right?
I'm
You're
present.
focused.
Yeah.
You're focused. You're totally present on the task at hand. You're like, well, if I turn right on this street, then left on that street, that's the highway that's going to take me south, eventually getting me to the border, right?
If I'm not turning around telling my kids, "Hey, don't make me stop this car."
Yeah, that's right. Don't make me turn this back and go home. So in life, life's like driving a car, okay? When you're driving a car, you're focused on the stoplight, you're focused on the stop sign, the pedestrian here. I'm going to turn right at the next block. I go down 3 blocks, I turn left, and there's a grocery store right there. And then once I'm in the grocery store, I'm walking down the aisle, I'm going to get, my milk and my cheese and my vegetables are over here. It's like in life, we want to be present. So when we create our rituals, we want to keep our eye on the North Star, okay? My North Star is the home I'm building now, but I've been focused on this North Star for 21 years. 21 years I've dreamed about having a dream home like this, okay? And now it's finally happening. It hasn't been 21 days, okay? So this is what people say when I tell them this stuff. They're not persistent, they're not patient, and they're not diligent. If you create your imprints and you set your day up so you're moving your body, you meditate, you visualize, you write it down in a journal format every single day, and you happen to life and you consciously impose your intention on life every single day, and you do it consistently, and you're focused like you are in your car on the road sign directly ahead of you with the North Star in the back of your mind, but your present conscious presence right there in that moment, you will get there. The challenge is that most people give up.
That's
because
right.
they're not persistent, they're not patient, and they're not diligent. It didn't happen in the amount of time that they hoped it would. Which here we are talking to chiropractors. How ironic is that? The healing process takes time. And I'll say, if you have people in your practice saying, Doc, I'm not better yet. One, you haven't opened them up to the big idea of chiropractic. Two, it's because the person that you're being is just being reflected back to you as a mirror from the people that you're attracting into your office presently. And the second you start making changes in that and understanding life is a journey, life is a process. Cell biology, your cut on your hand doesn't heal overnight. It takes several days, maybe a week. If you have some debilitating process going on, you know what? It may take 6 months. It may take 6 years. I don't know. But your body's an intelligent organism and it can get there. And we're just concerned with being on the journey of getting there, even knowing that sometimes those journeys are going to be symptomatic and other times asymptomatic. It's like, how beautiful does this? That's what I mean. Remember I said, I live my life vitalistically. So, when I think about practice, my people, I think about how I live my life, there's like no separation. It's like exactly the same thing. Life is a journey. Healing's a journey. Building my practice is a journey. Having people embark on the journey with me under chiropractic care is a process and journey. It's not an event. I'm an athlete. I think physiotherapy is great. I think, some of the modalities out there are great, but it's not chiropractic. And chiropractic is so much more than that. And I went to the CMCC and I meet my friends and I'm like, dude, you went to the wrong school, man. You should have went to physio school. It would have cost you less money and you would have been graduated faster. That's my ongoing joke with them. So I'm like, you're not practicing chiropractic. You're a chiropractor, but you're not practicing chiropractic. Yeah. So we've got two, right? We've talked about imprints.
Imprints, and
Yeah.
then creating your day consciously too.
Creating your day consciously, and I gave some tools for doing that.
Yep.
Cool. Should we move on to
And
3?
yeah, let's head into 3. I'm just gonna make a comment too because I love what
Okay.
you're saying here too. It's really kind of resonating with me. Is that the it's interesting because my wife and I practice together, and we've always practiced together. And
Yeah.
then when I became unwell,
Yeah.
so let's just say I got sick, and
Yeah.
I was in pain daily. Like, yet I stayed in practice and I was very focused, very present at that time, but mentally I was, I was a magnet for people who were, guess what? I started, like, I have a wellness family practice, but I started attracting, guess
Yeah.
what, into my office.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then as soon as I stepped away, so put less time in the office and it became more Karen's office. Like,
Yeah.
for example, yesterday, she saw more kids than she saw adults.
Wow.
Whereas like, 6 months, 8 months ago when I was there more and
Yeah.
still, and working through some stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is you can either be conscious of what you're attracting into your practice or your life, or you can
Yeah.
be unconscious. But either way, it's going to happen.
Either way, it's going to happen. The mechanics of how it works, I can theorize. We talk about physics; it's all theoretical anyway. But I know it works in reality.
Hmm.
So you don't have to figure out the mechanics of it, but just know whatever you focus on expands. Um, Huge,
It's a
really huge.
law.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's going to happen.
it's a law. It's a law. It's like gravity. It's like you don't believe in it, jump off the bridge. You're gonna see gravity in action.
It's like chiropractic, with Sid dropping the keys. Like it happens. It works every time. Like it happens. So
It works every time. Yeah.
let's hit number 3. Yeah.
Okay. This is really this. I've distilled this down into the best way to discover who you truly are and discover what's holding you back, and that is getting uncomfortable, potentially scared every single day. So, doing something every day that makes you very uncomfortable is so important because when you get outside of your comfort zone, you actually see the ego is shattered when you're outside your comfort zone. It's like when you're so comfortable, you can be this flamboyant, person, do X, Y, and Z. But the second that you get uncomfortable, you're all of a sudden like, ooh, you move to that place of vulnerability. You move to that place of exposing yourself. Me personally, one of the main ways I get uncomfortable is by being an endurance athlete. I'll give you an example. Like this morning, I was in the pool, swam for 90 minutes. I swim with a really fast group of swimmers, about 55 triathletes. Many of them are professional triathletes. There's multiple lanes, but here's an example. The end of September, there's about 8 different lanes, and I was swimming in the 3rd lane from the fastest lane. Okay, so one lane's like super fast, all these pros. Then next one's a little bit slower. Next one's a little bit slower, and then all the way 8 lanes over is like your slowest lane. So I was like 3rd one over, and so my goal and intent last year was to get to the front of that lane, to lead that lane, be the fastest swimmer in that lane. That was a lot of work because when you're leading a lane, if you slow down, people are going to be hitting your feet. It's kind of embarrassing. And when you put yourself out there, like I'm leading this set, you want to make sure you don't die halfway through a 20-minute main set, which might be like 2,500 meters. So then last year, again, getting out of my comfort zone, I said, well, I'm at the front of this one. Now I'm going to switch lanes. I moved over to another lane 3 months ago. So now I'm like almost in the fastest lane, but I'm at the back, okay? And my friend said to me, Sukhi, get in that lane, get on the back, hang on for dear life, and suffer. That was her exact words, okay? And she's a former national swimmer, okay? She's like, get on the back and suffer. So like, Ed, I gotta tell you, the night before, okay, I would think, oh man, I'm swimming tomorrow. And I swim 3 days a week, okay? So you can imagine this. I kind of had anxiety for the first month. Every night before I'd have to swim, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be in the pool. It's going to be another killer workout. I'm barely hanging on. I usually get dropped halfway through the workout and I'm sucking wind. And anyway, I got uncomfortable. Long story short, here we are, 2015. I'm now leading that lane. So not only am I not hanging on for dear life, there's about 8 swimmers, and I'm the fastest swimmer in that lane. And it wasn't too long ago, I could barely hold on. So me, that's how I choose to do it. Another way I choose to do it, I choose to be totally authentic and vulnerable in all my conversations and all my dynamics. Like, we'll talk about it. Someone dropping out of care. So I had someone drop out of care recently in my office. So rather than, I have this policy, whenever someone drops off care, my CA knows that, hey, let's sit down, have a connection with Dr. Sukhi, and we can say our final goodbyes. It is not a time to try to convince them to get back on care.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I do this is because I live in a community where I see people a lot, and I don't like weirdness. I don't like going to the grocery store and seeing them and they're doing this to me because they dropped out of care, and it's all like weird. So I like to avoid weirdness. So I have an open and authentic, vulnerable conversation. I'm like, so this service, you don't value it anymore. I'd love to know how I could improve. So in the future, if somebody like you comes, how I could serve them better. And people tell you the truth. That's not comfortable to say. That's like saying, I'm a dartboard, throw some darts at me because I know I'm not perfect. So I'm totally vulnerable. I put myself in that place. I get uncomfortable. But what does that do? That's allowing me to grow my business more and more. I actually had someone, I just said, dropped out of care recently. That's the first person who's dropped out of care in like 10, 11 months. That's like a huge stretch because I'm getting better at it. By the way, this person who dropped out of care, she's been getting adjusted for 11 years. And this person, we had a conversation. She didn't even want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But she's having some fertility stuff. She wants to do some acupuncture and some other stuff. And even in the conversation, she's like, oh, I'm going to be back. I just want to do this other stuff for a few months, and then I'm going to come back. But if she just left her last visit and I wasn't authentic and vulnerable, she's like, and she actually said, it has nothing to do with you. You've transformed my life. I've been coming here for 11 years. This has been amazing. But again, putting yourself out there, it was very uncomfortable for me to just, again, say that to her, right? So look at yourself in the mirror and think, what can I do today to get myself out of my comfort zone? Okay. I'm an athlete. For you, you may be a sedentary person. That might be going for a 15-minute jog. Going for a 15-minute jog might be something that gets you out of your comfort zone. Having a conversation with a friend, that the conversation that should have been had, or your partner, or your spouse, or your children, or your CA, or anyone, just like whatever. Do something every single day that's outside of your comfort zone, because the only way you grow is at the edge. That's one of my sayings. Growth only comes at the edge of your comfort zone. If you keep doing things that are, the simple analogy, it's like, if I pick up a 5-pound dumbbell and I start doing some curls here, it gets stronger. But after 3 weeks, I need more stimulus. I got to get 10 pound, then 15 pound, then 20 pound. And then I got to become a CrossFitter and all that good stuff, right? Like, you got to keep doing things to get at the edge of your comfort zone to continue to grow. And, for me, there's so many ideas and concepts that we can utilize to really plug in. But man, if we're changing those imprints and we're dreaming big, we're setting our intentions to the day through movement, through meditation, visualizations, and intentions, and every single day we're getting uncomfortable, plug that in for 8 weeks. Every single day for 8 weeks. Just give me that. Just give me 8 weeks. Give me 2 months. I guarantee your life will be very different than it was 8 weeks ago. Guaranteed.
This is perfect too, because the whole theme too of TCP Talks Virtual Summit is about giving doctors some strategies that they can take away and they can plug into play, right away, like on Monday. So this is perfect, and I love what you're saying here, because I know that docs are out there listening and they're going, oh man, I totally am attracting this into my life, or I'm not stretching, I'm not pushing my limits.
Yeah.
And or I'm comfortable, or whatever, however you want to word it.
Yeah.
One of the things like we kind of talked about in our pre-chat as well then, Sukhi, was that both you and I, like, we're so busy. And I get this from docs every time I interview them. They're like, man, you're always working, because if I send you an email, I hear from you like 2 minutes later. And I'm like, well, yeah, that, or just I'm in front of my computer producing stuff. But, here's the thing, like how do you structure your day? We
Mhm.
talked a little bit about rituals, but how do you structure your typical day so that you can get everything done? And what is of value to you throughout your day?
Um, my highest values, first and foremost, my highest value is my health. And I believe that our voids drive our values. I learned that from John DeMartini way back in the day. What that essentially means is there was a time in my life I lost my health. And now I've dedicated the past 22 years to making my health number one priority. What I put in my eyes, what I watch, what I read, very important. What I put in my mouth, very important. What I focus on, exercise, um, how I treat other people, because I believe that has an impact in my emotional well being, how I respond to other people, how I work through my stuff. Like, I want to bring my health to extraordinary levels. And I test at least my fitness by being an athlete, so I'm able to see it there. And then I believe I test my emotional health by seeing my relationships. When I look around and see my relationships, and I see, are they healthy or unhealthy? That's a really good measure. Like doing, say, a 5K race, knowing your physical fitness, this is your emotional fitness, to see how healthy are you emotionally. Are things, they're always like tension in the air, things like that. So my health's my number one value. Number two is my family. And family is not my number one, Ed, because I know with experience, if I lose my health, the people who depend on me, I now become dependent on. So I can put family number one, and if I put health number two and I lose my health, all of a sudden my family's screwed. So I care about and I love my family so much that I have to put me above my family so I can be 110% for them in every which way, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, whatever, right? So number two is my family, being with friends, my wife, my daughter, people close to me, cultivating relationships, authentic conversations. Number three is creating abundance. And, I'll sit here and tell you right now, I believe every single DC needs to become a 7 or 8 figure net worth earner in their life.
Yeah.
And this is why I believe it, because we transform people's lives and we work hard and we need a sanctuary to go back to. We need holidays and vacations to recharge our batteries. And money gives you choices. I want to make the world a better place. As a result, I've gotten to a place where I do what I do because I feel like doing it. Most of the things I do in my life now are not have tos anymore. They're just because I've gotten to a place where, I don't have to actually be in practice. I choose to be in practice. I choose to do the things that I do because it's fun. If it's not fun, I'll stop doing it. But it's allowed me to be more philanthropic. It's allowed me to give back more. One of the things we talked about that I'm super inspired about is chiropractic mission trips.
Hmm.
We get to serve under undernourished, impoverished people and communities. My partner and I, Dr. Bradley Roush, we get to educate people, chiropractors, the community on the vitalistic principles of life and chiropractic. And we're able to give those chiropractors an experience. Those people are able to have health transformations. If we didn't create abundance, it's like, when I go on these mission trips, it actually costs me thousands of dollars. It's not like I'm not making money from this whole thing. Like, it's actually to make a difference and like to be able to give back. I donate to Make a Wish Foundation. Children pretty much on their deathbed that have a final wish and things like that. It's like when we have more abundance and more money, you realize it's actually not about us. It's not about us. It's not about, your fancy car, your fancy house. I know I talked about that, but the reality is you take away the house, you take away the car, you take away all that stuff. Those are just shiny trinkets that make you excited for a little bit. True happiness and fulfillment comes from here. And it truly does. And for me, I love to give. And I believe we chose to be chiropractors because we wanted to serve, we wanted to give. And the more abundance that you have, the more you can serve, the more you can give, the more you can be detached from people being under care, because now you're not dependent on the finances to
Oh
get them
yeah.
under care, which is huge. And you can just let go and you can be free. And the irony of that, once you're free in practice, it explodes.
That's an
That's,
awesome point.
yeah.
It's such a I always say this on the podcast it's such a powerful thing when you sit down with a practice member for a report of findings, and you're not attached to the outcome of the outcome of that conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're not thinking about the bills you have in your office,
Yeah.
and that's so powerful. And a lot of things changed even when I kind of transformed or transitioned into that place. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a huge point for docs right there. Now, I know there's so many listeners and viewers that are probably wondering right now, how do we get a hold of Dr. Sukhi? So can you let us know?
Yeah. Best way to get a hold of me is go to my website, go to my blog site. I got a bunch of sites. Go to drsukhi.com,
Okay.
DRSUKHI.com. You can download a free chapter of my book there. I have my daily manifesto that I have on my fridge. You can download that for free there too. And there's just more strategies to incorporate some of these concepts, if they resonate with you, and if they do that. One thing I did want to say that we talked about, how do I sort of simplify my life?
Yeah.
I didn't mention that. The first thing I do is my wife and we have calendars synced on our iPhones and computers. So my wife is also an entrepreneur. We have a 2-year-old daughter. If she's not with me, she's with her. We do have help, but not a lot. We kind of wanted to be with her as much as we could. And so everything's synced. Like, for example, when I'm in the pool this morning from 5 a.m. to 6:30, that's in the calendar. When I'm on a Skype call, with you at this time, that's in the calendar. So my wife knows. So we never double book each other. And then she knows which days. My only committed times are the 3 days where I'm in my office, which is about several hours each day. She knows I'm in my office those days. And everything is scheduled in right to the point where when I sit down and I meditate, I visualize and journal, it says on their Sukhi time, 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife knows, okay, Sukhi needs her time. Last night I knew I came back from the office. My wife, I knew I had to be home right away because she had a yoga class, and that's in our schedule. Everything we do, whether it's personal, whether it's professional, everything is scheduled in. If it's not scheduled in, guys, it's not getting done because all of our lives are busy. But the second you schedule it in, all of a sudden you're able to collapse time. And when you collapse time, it's like, I'm an endurance athlete, and the reality is when I get deep in my training, I'm going on 6-7 hour bike rides. That's a long time to be out there riding. But I'm also, my wife will be like, okay, this Saturday, we got this brunch scheduled at 11:30. Well, guess who's getting up at 3 a.m. and doing half his ride on the trainer in the dark for 3 hours, and when the sun rises at 6 a.m., I'll do the other 3 hours outside, and I'll be done my ride at 9 a.m. so we can go to that brunch. So, when we schedule everything, sometimes you gotta throw things around. When you make a commitment to create a schedule for the things that are most important to you, your values, what are those for me? My health, my family, creating abundance. That is what's all over my schedule, is doing those things.
Definitely, yeah. So important, right? Is to make sure that you're writing things down so they get accomplished, and also scheduling them. I make that mistake even today, where if I don't schedule that time, I mean, I could literally sit in my, like, as soon as I wake up, I could literally work all day.
Yeah.
And not even take care of myself. So, but if I schedule it, it pops up on my phone, or I see Karen's schedule, it happens.
Yeah. It is. It's huge. And it's huge. Like, I have, every single week, if I do the math, I have anywhere from 12 to 15 workouts a week. Some of them are short, some of them are only 15 minutes. But the point is, they're actually in the schedule.
Yeah.
It's like 9 p.m., it's like I put my daughter to bed at 8, but I get out of bed, 9 p.m., I'm doing some core work out in the living room here while I'm chatting with my wife. It just, if it's not scheduled in, I won't do it.
Yeah.
So
well, thank you so much for those knowledge bombs and value bombs for doctors today, and for your insight and the inspiration too, because I think that when it does come down to success and life, practice success, these are often the really key things that doctors are not really diving into and soaking in, It's more about marketing. It's not about the not having enough new patients out there. It's
Yeah.
all about, getting your mindset straight.
Yeah. And we'll close with something like this, Ed. You can do all the marketing and all the scripts in the world, but if you're not changing who you are, you're still attracting people from that same state. But until you change who you are and you take massive action, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge action guy. You got to take action. But when you're coming from a different place, all of a sudden the rewards of your action start to blow up and magnify in extraordinary ways. And that's been my life's journey. Yeah.
And that's an awesome way to wrap up this summit. Thank you so much, Dr. Sukhi, for, again, that insight today.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ed. It's awesome.